Alright, hey there. Just getting comfortable right here. As you can see, I've been tinkering around a little bit with Pro Builder a bit more. Kind of getting the hang of it, I think. But anyway, I was just gonna go over some of the systems I have in place here. Yeah, I'd actually forgotten if you had even sat in on one of my streams before. Yeah, you can see attached to the character here I have a few different scripts. I have one for controlling status. This one right here, the character control, it pretty much handles anything movement based. The attack animation handler. This is obviously it's more for communicating between the animator and the character controller. And then I have the AI input here, which this gets turned off if the character is under your control. But anyways, just a quick save here, and I can show what it actually looks like in practice. Obviously nothing here is finished. Yeah, you can see I've got movement. And also changed the idle animation to be just a little bit more kind of at the ready. Looking just sort of a little more lively, as it were. And then if I go ahead and lock onto trickle right here. And you can see I've got those bars that fill up there. Those are the AP. You can spend those on attacks, skills, whatever. Right now I'm just going to use it on a combo. You see I've got varying degrees of it. It's one hit, re-hitter. Actually, one very subtle change that I have made. Hold on, if I go into scene view here. Or actually, you know what? I don't even need to do that. Just turn gizmos on. And you can see here, I've got you can see the capsule collider, and you can also see inside of it here the nav mesh agent. Now, the way the movement system works is that when you press a button, you can see the nav mesh agent kind of moving inside the capsule. And it gives a nice effect of being able to sort of create invisible walls without actually having to add any extra geometry. But another thing it does is that if, say, a character is moving, I did previously have a problem where oftentimes, like, if you were trying to attack a moving character, you'd run into position and then you just end up swiping at the air. So instead, because well, originally I was aiming at the transform of the character, which is right at their center. So instead, I have it aim at the nav mesh agent, and that makes it so that a little bit more predictive. So that they'll actually sort of aim more at where the character is going than right where they just were. Anyway, and for some reason I always end up pulling this out of place. Back where you're supposed to be. There we go. But yeah, I was just going to go over the way the attack system works. If I actually go into my animation and go to the first combo here. You see, first of all, I have this play weapon effect, and this is what triggers both the sound and the sort of slash effect that you get. Then right here I have the actual call to perform the action, which I'll go over that a little bit more in a bit here. And then I have this final one, which is can transition. And now if I actually see here, just bring up the right script. Let's bring it up from here. See, right here, you can see I have a delegate declared. Let's call this on action. And then attached to this is the on can transition. And you see what this does. Once it calls can transition, you see, sets this variable here true. It also increments the combo number. We'll go over that as well. And it also makes a call to the delegate because I can have other things assigned to there. I have a few other things in here related to like delays between things, but that's not really so important right now. Oh, delegates are actually, they're really handy. You can see right here on the right in the start function, you can see you can actually add actions onto the delegates. So essentially by calling this one, like, it's almost a function in a way, but it's almost like calling one function that can then call anything that's attached to it. So you can see right when this starts, it adds the on attack press onto here, and you can actually remove these in the same way, like if you just do minus equals if you have something attached to it. In fact, there's some more here. So I thought there were. Here we go. This should be it. Well, actually, one thing I forgot in the animator right here. You see here, it looks very basic. And don't worry, some of these are just here for we're here for experimentation. But if you look up here, there's actually a script attached to this particular section. You can see what this does. It just sets a few extra parameters while any animation is playing within this. So one of the things it does is it sets enable control to false. That way the player can't like move around while they're attacking. You know, they're basically kind of at the, they'll go through the set animation as it is. And yeah, there's no real like right way to do this, but this is just how I've done it myself, and it's worked out pretty well for me, I think. And another thing I did is I created this here, just a basic class. I call this entity action, and this is what I use to store essentially like what thing to do next, what action. You see here, this has an enum attached to it. It could be combo, skill, or dodge. And then it also takes in a skill number, which that can vary. The skill number will either be essentially the skill that you either the skill that you have attached to you, or it will be the next number in the combo. And then also there's another thing here, it checks if it's evaluated yet. And if I go in here, this is essentially the combat loop within update right here. And yes, there are hitboxes. I'll go over those in a little bit here. You can see it does make a few checks for things. For one thing, if there is any attack delay that's still present, then it'll clear out any actions that you try to send to it. And another thing is that the actions here are stored in a list. So you can see here, it checks for the first one in the list, which that's the one in the 0 place. And it checks if it's evaluated. Then it'll go through sort of different things depending on if it's a combo or a skill. First it'll like test it out to see if it's even possible to perform it. And then it also sets a bit of an offset for distance calculations, where it just takes in like the enemy's radius. And yeah, if you're within the right distance, then sets evaluated to true. I just go down here, and pardon all this. My code's kind of a mess. I realize that. Let's just bring down some of this stuff here. You can see right here, this is the function. This is called from the whatever input script is being used, either the user input or the AI input. So it'll check for like how many actions it has queued up already, and if it's less than 2, it adds it on. If it is equal to or is equal to 2, then what it'll do is it will remove the most recent one and then add whatever you've just hit in its place. So gives you a little bit of a chance to sort of correct any errors. But then also if the count is at 0, yeah, also make sure to check if things are evaluated or not. And this is just what's used here to test the action, but that's not really important right now. And then right here I have the perform action. And you can see right here how combos and skills work a little bit differently. You can see what this does is it goes in the combo list, and I will talk about that as well. And actually, because the combos are all scriptable objects, so each of them has some code in it. And so this just accesses the trigger ability function within it. And of course also make sure that the the combo number that the attack handler sends it is less than the actual count of the combos. And yes, the entity action is a list. If I just go up here, I know it's in here somewhere. Here we go. You can see right here, public list, entity action, actions. And yeah, then if I actually go in here, you can see the actions. Size is currently 0, but if I add 1, and you see here, I can access all this because, hold on, I set this to be serializable. So that means that I can actually view it from within the inspector like this. You can see here. Let's just set that to 0 again. And actually, if you notice here, the combos is currently set to 0. Now the reason for that is because the combos are attached to the weapon. And if I just access Spirit's weapon here, this is also a scriptable object. And you see it has information about the mesh, the material it uses, and then it also has its attacks. And all the combos are stored in here. And once everything starts up, it runs a equip function, which just basically looks at the weapon and then adds all of these onto the character. And you can just see these here. These are also scriptable objects, the combos. And you see they have a range to them, which this is what sets essentially how far outward it'll go. Also have information about the sound, MP cost, AP cost. Weapon type is not implemented yet, but that'll essentially be like, you know, of course, actually, you know, it's kind of unnecessary for these since they're attached to the weapon, but it's there for the time being. There's also an attack multiplier, and there is an animator ID, and this effects point number is what controls where it sends the slash effect out from. And the custom callback, let me just go into the actual script for that. The custom callback is done with a Unity event right here, which is something kind of interesting that I found out about, so I figured why not use it. And you see here, here's the trigger ability function that I talked about earlier, and it also takes essentially, like, you know, information about whatever is using it. So it has, you know, the entity control caller. And then once this is activated, the custom callback is invoked. things here. Here I have the physical attack. This has sort of its own things. And you can see that the hitbox is done with a sphere cast. And I have a few other things in here, but essentially what it lets me do, if I go into my scriptable objects again, you can see here it has the active skill physical attack selected, and then this part right here just sets the radius of the sphere cast. But if I wanted to, I could add something else onto here. Click add to list, and then I just take the scriptable object, drop that right in there, and then I can select one of the functions from here. Sounds like there's fireworks going on outside. Glad I could show you some stuff. Yeah, I don't consider myself a Unity expert by any means, but you know, I've learned a few tricks here and there, I think. Yeah, the hitbox does have a certain amount of that. You can see here I construct the raycast. And first of all, it just uses it creates an origin right here, which is essentially just the position of whatever's calling this, and then it also takes their capsule collider's height divided by 2. So it's always sent out from sort of their center. And then you can see here in Spherecast All, it sends out the ray. It uses the radius, which is set up right here. And it also uses the range variable. So that's just right here. And it also uses a layer mask. And hold on here. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. Spherecasts are probably more efficient because they only pop up when you need them. So, you know, when you're not actually using them, you know, they don't take up any additional resources. Alright, why is it? Why did it decide to put him into the ground like that? That's... I know I've had this happen before, and I know I've been able to fix it, but I can't remember how. No. There we go. Yeah, close enough. So let me just make sure nothing's messed up here. Ooh, you can really hear him now. The skill ID, that yes, yeah, skill ID is dependent on the slot it's equipped in. So you can have a maximum of 5 skills attached on at once here. And just double checking my code, making sure that, you know, I was indeed right. Yeah, not everything is perfect yet. There's obviously a lot to go. But, you know, most of the basis is there, and I've got it working pretty solidly. Oh, hey, not a problem. I'm actually glad I was able to help in some small way. As you can see in here for the movement, I have a blend tree set up. One thing for movement, and then also if you're turning, you do lean slightly to either side. It's just a little something extra that I added. It's very subtle, but it's there. And yeah, you can actually see here how when you go into either an attack or a skill, it actually takes you here through the any state one. And it just takes information based on the weapon type, the skill ID, and then whether it's an attack or a skill. Oh, and actually another thing, you can see here the user input script is actually attached onto the camera. And in the other level I was doing, I had some partner characters, and one thing you could do is that you could essentially just sort of drop any character into here, and then you could control them using this. In fact, it even works for enemies because they're all based off of the same scripts at their core. Because you can see here I have this entity control script, but for a spirit he has a character control. And that all works just because character control derives from it. And you know what? Yeah, I should be able to. Hold on. At least I think I think I have it set up right, so I can do that. So there's a trickle, and if I drag him in to here, and let's oop. Okay, yeah. Actually, no, let's see what happens if I just disable its AI from the start. No, oh, you know what? It's because I have it so that it looks for the one marked character at first. However, let's see here. Where did... Here we go. And all right, I did it wrong. I was putting it in the wrong thing. I'm forgetting how my own stuff works. That's very odd. It is not accessing its status. I know I can do this. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to let this get the better of me. It's telling me that OBS disconnected. I'm seeing what I've done wrong. There we go. I am now a trickle. Actually, if you look at their bodies, you can see that there is a slight sort of wobbly effect on their outer mesh. And that's actually done using a little trick in a shader. Yeah, but then Spirit's just kind of there. Not really doing much of anything. And yeah, I meant for it to be this way. Like I said, everything, like, enemies and characters are essentially just using different variants of the same scripts. Like, everything derives from the entity control script that I made. Because if I go into here, you can see here this has some unique trickle control script. If I edit it, you can see that it derives from enemy control. And then if I go into enemy control, you can see that this derives from entity control. So as long as any script can access something within entity control, it can also work with anything that derives from it. Yeah, inheritance is kind of one of those. Once I found out how to do that, it changed everything. It made everything just so much more efficient. In fact, I'm really looking forward to one of the planned new Unity features. What was it? What was it called again? It's like the entity something system. But essentially, it's a way of doing in-engine what I have achieved through scripts here. Oh, the entity component system. That's what it was. I remember now. I'm really looking forward to that because that apparently streamlines a lot of stuff. And yeah, it does it by essentially having everything work off the same scripts depending on what that specific object is classified as. It's not really a visual scripting thing. In fact, by what I understand, it's even more heavily syntax based than all this is, which that's not a problem for me because I'm weird and I enjoy all the syntax. But yeah, for normal people, it's probably going to be a challenge. Yeah, it's supposed to make things a whole lot more efficient. Like you can have literally thousands of objects on screen at once, like all moving, all like, doing their own calculations, but barely using any resources. And at least the way I understand it is that it works by essentially, instead of everything having its own script attached to it, like, even if it is using the same script as something else, uh, essentially it'll just have the like component values, and then everything that you want to use, say status, well, it'll essentially all be handled through a single script that just reads through the values of everything that is marked as having status. There's actually a channel on YouTube called Brackies. If you look them up, they're really good. They have some great Unity tutorials, and they went over the entity component system. And yeah, it looks pretty amazing. I mean, depending on how much retooling it takes, I may go with it, or I may just stick with things as they are, but it definitely sounds very promising. Anyway, so that's enough of me nerding out for now. But hey, I'm gonna shut things down for now. But thanks for stopping in. I'm glad I was able to do this. It's been too long since I've done one of these streams, and I wanted to rectify that. Hey, thanks to everyone who stopped in today. Sorry if this was kind of boring and nerdy, but this was partly done just to help a friend. So I guess until next time, I will see you all later.